A big thank you to the clothing companies that have advertised with the channel for this video.
All right, welcome to UK Casuals. How are you today, Charles?
I'm great, Matty. It's Friday. It's the end of the week. Looking forward to the weekend as always. So yeah, very well, thank you.
It's always good the weekends. The football's coming up.
The international break, so it's not quite the same, but it's not.
Well, no, yeah, of course. With the magazine, it's very unique. So it's a double barrel question, really. When and why did you decide to come up with the magazine?
Okay, probably the better side of that question is who decided to come up with it.
Well, yeah, who? Yeah. There's
a number of us involved in Paninaro, as you can imagine, and my good friend and one of my partners, Robert Chambers, who's better known, I suppose, to the Instagram crowd as Social Recluse.
Right.
Robert was, I think it was on holiday in France a number of years ago, and he came across a travel magazine, and I won't reveal the name of it or which one it was, but it's actually lying on his desk in his office. That became the inspiration for Robert to go ahead and try and do a magazine. At that point, he wasn't too sure what the magazine was going to be, but he knew how he wanted it to look. So as time passed and he started talking to other people about it, he started to formulate the idea over a period of years. So it wasn't that he sat down one day and thought, you know what, I really want to start a magazine. He was inspired by a publication that he saw. And from then onwards, the thought process was almost organic. You know, he just took little bits from pieces as he went through his daily life and the people round about him. He started pitching an idea to some people close to him, and they got on board. Robert's that kind of guy where you would do anything for him, and they brought people into the fold, and that grew and grew, and that's what became what we know today as the Paninaro magazine.
Now, how long did this take? Do you have any idea? Was it a long time? Was it quite quick?
As I said, it was quite an organic process. He was just inspired by a publication that he saw, and thereafter, I would say it was probably between 3 and 5 years from originally seeing that magazine until the actual launch of Paninaro. Paninaro itself, from the name and from the general idea, was probably 2.5 years. It was probably 2.5 years to formulate that. And at that point, obviously, it was the pandemic, and the decision was taken just to go ahead and release it.
Right. Were there any other names in the running?
Not as far as I've been aware, no. It's always been Paninaro. As you can imagine, the boys are huge admirers of the Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah.
Huge admirers of the Paninaro culture, and everything that we wanted the magazine to stand for was kind of encapsulated within that track. So the words that Chris Lowe speaks there, in terms of we don't like much, but what we do like, we love passionately.
Yeah.
That everything we do, and you guys are pretty much the same. You know, we've got those things round about us, whether it be football, whether it be trainers, whether it be the brands like Adidas or Stone Island or whatever it may be. We've become quite passionate about it, and people who tend to be passionate about those type of things tend to be the type of people who follow Paninaro.
Yeah. Your first issue, the actual magazine, because there was nothing else quite like it out there. The first issue flew out. I think, was it a week until it sold out, the actual magazine?
Yeah, so it was quite a strange process. As I said, we took a bit of a gamble in putting it out, which I think is in March. So as you can imagine, it was still the height of the pandemic, and people around about, and you're absolutely crazy. Nobody buys print anymore. Nobody wants to see a magazine. It won't go anywhere. You'll be lucky to sell a couple of 100 copies.
Yeah.
So we cracked on. We cracked on regardless, and we released it on a Friday night, as you probably know. I think it was midnight on the Friday, and we were WhatsApping each other. You know, that's it released, that's it going live. And I was just in bed, my wife Lucy, and I'm like, oh, that's the magazine released. Put the phone off, put it to the side, and I remember Lucy saying to me, you know, how this was a fairly common conversation between the boys and the wives, I think, at this time on a Friday. How many do you think you'll sell? I think we were all saying, you know what, see if we sold 200, 250, we'd be absolutely delighted. It was a lot more than that, as you probably know. And we got up in the Sunday morning, and Robert was giving us updates by the hour in terms of what the numbers were looking like. And obviously I was receiving the emails as people were going through PayPal, etc., and monitoring everything that was happening. And it was really exciting. It was really exciting to see it take off during that process. So that weekend, right up until the Sunday night, we'd we'd done what we needed to do in terms of covering our costs and overheads. We'd pretty much done that in 48 hours on a pre-order, which was pretty incredible for a magazine told people were telling us wouldn't work, and people are very keen to tell you what won't work.
Yeah.
Nobody seems to know what will work, but everybody seems to be an authority on what's not going to work.
Yeah, of course.
So by the end of that weekend, we were absolutely delighted. We couldn't believe it, and we were just, as I said, we stay a wee bit away from each other, so we were WhatsApping. You probably know this. Some of the boys in London, some are in Glasgow, some are throughout the UK. So we're just going, it's great, it's brilliant, so delighted, and then by the course of the week, before we'd even got the stuff back from the printers, we'd sold out, and it was amazing. Yeah, we're absolutely delighted.
Yeah. It's become, the first issue has become a bit of a Charlie Wonka ticket. People are still after it now. They're still, does anyone know? Is anyone selling it secondhand? It really is. It really was a weird, because like you said, everything's online today as we know it. You just get on your laptop, you get on your phone. To actually sell a magazine, I think was amazing. So you've mentioned a couple of other names. Who's the team?
Who's the team? It was quite a wide and varied team. So as you can imagine, we're from different socio-economic backgrounds. We're from different football clubs. We're from different cities and towns throughout the UK. Different religions, different walks of life. So there's 14 of us in total. 14 of us have got a stakeholding within the magazine, and that varies about who's got what. But overall, it's a 14-person team.
Is there there's bound to be a lot of banter between the lads then and the different football clubs, because we're all very loyal to our club, aren't we?
Yeah.
So I can imagine the banter there.
You can during having some of the English lads on board, then you can imagine during the European Championships, we were before the Scotland and England game, we were just praying that Scotland wouldn't lose because we couldn't move it back. So I think everybody concerned with the magazine 0-0 was a good result.
I can imagine.
Going through it, I suppose there was a fair bit of banter between the Scottish lads and English lads, etc., just about the way that tournament was going. But so, as you probably know yourself, Matty, I think the media always try and blow rivalry. There's always mental cases in every walk of life, but
of course,
the rivalry part of it is what a lot of us love about football, which is what we love about terrace culture. It's about that one-upmanship. Your team getting one over on your rivals. And 9 times out of 10, it's pretty good natured, and it's what drives us and what makes us very passionate about football.
Yeah, I think so. Now, your content is quite it's nearly the same as what I do. It's very football casual based. You've just mentioned yourself about the culture on the terraces. There was no other magazine out there like it. Did you think anyone would be interested? Because a lot of it is always said, it was in the 80s. But I don't believe that. It's still going on today, isn't it? Of course it is.
Yeah. So there's a couple of boys who are very familiar with that, with that period of history, let's call it. They're very familiar with what it took being casuals in the 80s and the 90s, and they've lived it. They've lived it and worn the T-shirt. They know just what's involved in that culture. And again, Matty, you probably saw it through your own medium that there's such a strong community out there. They're always helping each other out. They might have been rivals in terms of the streets and the terraces, but if they're doing a charity fundraiser for something or something's come up, all those guys, all the different casuals who are associated with across the country, always right behind each other and supporting each other. So the rivalry is absolutely massive. Of course it is. But the unity amongst it is something that's a bit special. And I think it's a bit difficult to make people out with the culture understand that. So those guys, they've latched on to what we do. And we've been offered, since I'd be quite open and say, we've been approached by bigger people who've come to us and say, we think this could be massive and it could be this and it could be that. To be honest with you, we're really happy with our independence and being faithful be faithful to the guys who were there from the start, and that won't change for the foreseeable future. We want to really stay faithful to those people and make sure that they've got a voice that they can see in print, and that we're printing stories and we're printing editorials and we're printing photos that those guys want to see, that sparks a memory. Yeah, it's a little bit nostalgic, but we think there's a space for that, and it would appear so, going on the 2 sold out editions we've had so far.
Yeah, no, I think, Charles, that it's really important what you do. And one of the reasons why I do it is because the mainstream media will not give football lads a fair crack of the whip. Like you said, whenever someone's ill or there's a funeral, it's like everyone gathers round, and we all stick together. And I think that's what your magazine does. It does give football lads the voice that is much needed, really. I want to talk about social media because it's a bit... sometimes it's the devil's tool and sometimes we need it. How much has social media been involved with the release of the magazine?
Well, my colleague Bobby, he runs Instagram, and a lot of people will know Bobby from Facebook or from the Instagram posts, and he does an absolutely brilliant job with that. Personally, I don't know how he can be bothered with what goes on in the social media world. Obviously, I've got Instagram, and that's a little bit different because I don't have 10,000 people following me like Bobby has to contend with.
Yeah.
And the messages, they vary. So I'll give you a couple of scenarios. When we released the magazine, the people who are very faithful Paninari, who follow Paninaro in terms of what that culture actually meant, they were giving us a bit of stick saying, well, it's called Paninaro, but it's not about Paninaro, it's about casual culture. We weren't purporting to be about Paninaro. It's the name of the magazine. We've taken that name pretty much from the song, as I said, about being passionate about the things we love.
Yeah.
So a little bit of stick flying about in social media for that, fair enough. But then you get the other side of it when we done the Fenners article, and that's when you see the good side of social media and the messages that Bobby was getting from people who were having a hard time, and they've been through a scenario similar to what Fenners had been through, and to see someone like Fenners, who's pretty much a lad like them, who loves his clothes, loves his football, loves his music, stuff they can very much relate to see someone like him come out and chat so openly and honestly the way he did, it was incredible. And the reaction we got from that on social media was actually amazing, and it shows you what the strength of social media can actually be. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there which we try and just push to one side and not react to, but then there's other side. It makes it all worthwhile, let's put it like that.
Yeah, I think the thing, what you're talking about, the mental health subject, is so important, especially amongst young men, or even men in general, that the football lad culture is very macho, so we're not going to talk about that necessarily. But for a guy to come out like Fenners and say it, I think that article was smashing. I do remember a picture seeing the first issue of Paninaro on Soccer AM. Was it very hard to get hold of Fenners?
Well, Bobby and Fenners are friendly, so
okay.
And then Al, who's obviously, him and Fenners know each other as well. In terms of the article, Bobby and Fenners are friendly, but they're a few hundred miles away from each other, so I don't think John's that bothered that Bobby's going to turn up his door asking him to go out for a pint every day or whatever it's going to be. But they've got that relationship where he was entirely comfortable. And I mean, you've got to take your hat off to Fenners in terms of, firstly, for coming out and doing the article itself.
Oh, completely, yeah.
Actually doing it with Paninaro. If you think about the context of that and the personality that he is, he could have easily gone somewhere and made himself money by doing that. He could have easily done that, but that's not what he wanted. And I think that speaks volumes for him, that he was willing to share that story with a magazine that was only in its second edition, but he had that relationship with Bobby where they felt entirely comfortable about it, and he wanted to tell the story, and he knew firmly that we were on his side, and that people who were engaged with the magazine, people like yourself, Matty, and the people who engage with casual culture, were firmly on his side as well. And it turned out spectacularly well for us, and we're just delighted about it.
It is a problem. What are we going to do? Kill the geezers? Yeah. Any volunteers? 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4.
Want to come for a swim, Frankie?
Any good? Get rid of all that Spanishified shit. I want red, black and chrome everywhere. Oh! I think that was out, Charles.
Sorry, it was in.
Sammy, it was in! I'm not playing no more, Charlie. And you?
Who killed the radio star?
Let me finish. Oh.
Not heard a bad word said about the magazine whatsoever. All the football groups I'm in on Facebook, everybody is waiting for the 3rd issue.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can give me about the 3rd issue, about what it's going to be about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, 3rd issue will be Screamadelica stroke 1991 special. What I would say to you is that the first cover has obviously become a bit of a collector's edition. Second cover done by Marcus Reed looks amazing as well. We've got another guest artist for issue 3, and I saw the first draft of that yesterday, and it was. I knew what the context of it was going to be, but to actually see the print of it yesterday, I was absolutely blown away. And it's what I would say is get ready to get hold of a copy, because I really believe that the next edition of the magazine is worth the front cover itself. I think the price we charge for it is just worth the front cover, and it's exciting. So it's a Screamadelica special 1991. We've got great stories in there. We've got great people coming in. Stories obviously all around Screamadelica, Andy Weatherall, where that came from. Other people jumping in, and on top of that, Pat Nevin. I've interviewed Pat Nevin that in terms of his book, The Accidental Footballer. Yeah. And then we've got, although they didn't win the trophy in 1992, the season kicked off in 1991. So we've got a bit in there about Leeds United.
Okay.
And that looks pretty decent as well. So we're really pleased with the way that's turned out. And yeah, just really excited about it. Really excited. It's all just been pulled together just now. As you probably know, it's been a long time since the last edition, and there's a couple of reasons for that. But we're ready to go, and we're looking like we should have that out early part of November.
Oh, that's great, just before Christmas. Who does the artwork for the magazine? Because it's quite unique.
Yeah, so primarily it's Robert, Social Recluse. He's the visionary, I suppose you would call, behind the magazine, and it's him that pulls it all together and makes it look the way it does. It's just probably feel the same way yourself, Matt. We feel it's just visually stimulating. This one is a little bit different because we have got some photograph collections in there, so it's not as perhaps art heavy as the first two have been.
Right.
But it's still well designed, and it still looks pretty impressive. And again, I think people who are our kind of age group and our kind of culture will really relate to the photography that's going in there, and the time in our lives that it's actually capturing. So yeah, it's really exciting. It's really exciting. It gets more exciting as days go by and it starts all coming together. And as I said, when I saw the front cover yesterday, it was really it was a bit of a seminal moment again. It's one of those strange things that have been part of Paninaro since Robert done the first cover, the Chris Lowe one, the actual Paninaro one. Each artist who comes in thereafter, they're tasked with actually surpassing that or not falling.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And do you know what? It's for the first time in my life, I'm glad I can't draw, because I don't know if I could cope with that level of pressure.
You didn't, yeah, wouldn't that? If you wanted
fair play to them.
Like you say, the next issue has to live up to the past issue.
But coming back the other way, Matty, I suppose from us, and we're always keen to speak to other people. What are the kind of things? Thinking you're our buyer, obviously. You're the man buying the magazine as it goes on. What kind of things is it you'd like to see in the magazine, or what is the kind of standard of reporting, or is there football teams, or is there commentary you'd like to see in there? What is it that you're thinking?
I think what I'd like to see personally, in my opinion, is already what you're doing. It's about football culture, and the lads on the terraces and what we wear, what we like, football, fashion, friendship. You've already had some brilliant guys that have got involved with you. Original Casuals. They've been part of the magazine, so to speak. Love the brand. Interviewed them for my website. Hopefully, going to get them on for my next for my next interview. Yeah, but really, I mean, it's the football's important. Don't get me wrong, but it's the lads on the terraces and the actual culture, because a lot of it's being lost with corporate and a lot of football. There is, especially in the Premiership, you talk a lot now. You see the lads talking about non-league because it's untouched. It's still, it is what it was.
Interestingly enough, with it, obviously we've got some context around some of the Premier League stuff, but in the next couple of editions that are coming up, there is, I don't think it actually falls into the next edition, but the editions that come after that, there's going to be a wee bit more there, which is non-league and it's lower leagues. Some of the guys involved with Paninaro don't follow big clubs, they follow very small clubs, and we're trying to capture all round that in terms of football. So we've been out and had a look at some clubs up and down the country. We were having a look at Dulwich Hamlet. We were over having a look at Ossett and various others. I can't remember the one. There was another one down south we've had a bit of a chat about as well.
I support Weymouth, which is non-league.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. So I'll be very interested in that issue because, like I said, it's untouched by the modern game almost, and you can still have a sing, you can still grab a pint, and I think there'd be a lot of lads out there that would want to read about what they go to see, if that makes any sense.
What modern football's kind of lost is the ability. So obviously I've got children now and they're 16 and 20, but they can't really go along to the football and stand with their mates on the terraces, because in all seater stadiums, you know, you've got a ticket and you meet with the other end of the stadium. You can't get a season ticket next to your mate, so you can't really walk along and stand with your mates and a group of your mates, and you can't literally make friends on the terraces because you're sitting next to who you're sitting next to, and you're stuck with those people unless they move. So at non-league football, though, as you know, following Weymouth, you and a couple of mates, you can wander along there on a Saturday afternoon. You can stand where you like. You can get a pint at the side of the game. You can indulge in some good-natured banter and wander around the terrace. You know, if you don't like your view of the game, wander around, watch from a different position.
Yeah.
And I think football has lost that terrace side of it. And even bringing back the safe standing, it's not the same as what the terraces were like. So if you want to sample that, I think you do need to go non-league. And we'll be out and about. We'll be a wee bit Paninaro on tour over the next year or so.
Yeah.
We'll be visiting some grounds and we'll be making some friends and sampling some beers on the terraces, hopefully. I
think that would be fantastic. My football podcast, my last episode that I do with a couple of friends, we talked about safe standing, and one of the guys said that too much is being made is safe standing. I think everybody, safe standing, get it in, it's going to go back to like it used to be. But as you just said, I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, so I saw some of the safe standing stuff, and I think it's great, and it does add to that part of the crowd. But you end up with a section of the crowd who, you know, they've got them kind of modern ultras kind of thing, which for me is not really casual culture. Ultras is different altogether. So they tend to like that safe standing section and what that kind of means to them. I don't think it really ticks the boxes in terms of bringing back a terrace, though, and just being able to stand where you like and wander around. It's a poor man's terrace, if you want, for me. It's just not. But the truth is, Matty, we're not going to get it back, unfortunately. No, we're not, mate. No, we're not. Unfortunately. You mentioned ultras. Crystal Palace have got ultras, and I think a few other lower league teams have got. Will you be covering ultras, or will you just stay as football casuals?
I would think it would be unlikely, unless there's a bit of a blurring of the line. Now, we try not to be black and white about things. Subculture that we're all part of there, and football music subculture, the lines are blurred, and Paninaro likes to do that. We like to blur the lines between music and fashion, or fashion and football, or music and football, whatever it may be. And I think there is certain elements where the line between the ultras and the casuals is slightly blurred. There's other parts, but there's a pure differentiation. So if you look abroad, and obviously you know that Cool Britannia is part of the magazine, Dan out in Argentina.
Yeah.
And if you look at, they don't really have a casual culture to speak. It's an ultra culture, but their ultra culture is maybe a bit closer to what casual culture is than maybe what UK ultras are. So I think some of it may filter through, but we'll still be pretty faithful to what we're already in tune with, to be honest with you.
I think that's good to hear. Okay, Charles, thank you for coming on, mate. It's been really interesting to listen to you, especially to get a little bit about the third issue as well. Like I say, the success is well deserved, and long may it continue. That's the end of the show. Like I say, I'd like to thank Charles for coming on from Paninaro magazine, and there'll be more videos coming from UK Casual soon.